We know from temperate forests that extreme heat can be very deadly. A few years ago in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, trees turned brown and died because the temperatures were so much hotter than what these trees were used to dealing with. I write a lot about stresses on agriculture, crops, plants. Some of the hottest ecosystems on Earth are in the tropics. These forests have experienced some heat already, but it's really nothing compared to what they're expected to have to cope with by the end of the century. I was curious how much they're already adapted to high heat. What I found really exciting was how scientists are investigating this out in the real world. One of the first ones that really caught my attention is a place called the Boiling River. It's in eastern Peru. Superheated water is rising up through the ground and flowing into a river. The hottest parts of the forest along the Boiling River are 11 degrees Celsius higher than what's normal for a tropical forest. Where the water starts out very hot and then cools, they're able to compare the same species of trees living in air that's at different temperatures. What they found was as they got closer to this superheated stretch of the river, the diversity went down. Trees could live there, but it's not the same forest. One way to evaluate how capable a plant might be of dealing with extreme heat is by taking a piece of its leaf, exposing the plant very briefly to higher temperatures while it's still alive. They shine light on it, they measure the light that's reflected back, and you can see how capable the plant is of absorbing wavelengths of light. And then they can measure how efficient the photosynthesis is. It's an amazingly intricate process, and it can become less efficient as temperatures goes up. So one benchmark is the point at which the leaf has lost 50% of its ability to photosynthesize. They found near the Boiling River is that plants have increased their efficiency relative to plants that are living at lower temperatures. That brings them up closer to the threshold where there's real trouble for the plant. So one interesting thing about the study is that they didn't find those really clear differences in how leaves can cope with higher temperatures. One reason for this may be the fact that those forests have lived there for centuries, millennia. The plant can cope with higher temperatures by growing new leaves that are better shaped to not heat up as much. That will be better able to radiate out some of the heat that it's absorbing from the sun. Another way that a plant can cope is to have more stomata in the leaf, tiny pores in their leaves. That allows evaporating water to come out of the leaves and helps cool the leaf. If they're water stressed, then those stomata will close to try and conserve water. Hot drought is a real concern. So at the Boiling River, it's adapted to change. If you think about tropical forests that are on hillsides, these forests are already adapted to different temperatures. So a natural experiment is to take trees used to living at colder temperatures and move them down into the lowlands. Scientists can measure the gases that are coming in and out of the leaves. Plants take in carbon dioxide, they release oxygen as part of their metabolism, and by measuring the concentrations of those gases, they can get a handle on how well the plant is photosynthesizing. By looking at a range of species in these transplant experiments, they may be able to get an idea of which species are better able to cope with rising temperatures and which ones won't fare as well. Two of the tree species that they looked at the lower temperatures didn't seem to have much resilience to those higher temperatures. The beauty of this experiment is that they see trees that aren't responding as well. In the boiling forest, those trees might have just simply not survived there. Researchers are doing experiments in the field, so it's realistic, but they're controlling the heating. There's a marvelous experiment going on in Puerto Rico where researchers have set up heating panels in the tropical forest. That allows them to keep the understory warmer than normal, what we're expecting tropical forests will be facing by the end of the century. They're looking at lots of things in this tropical forest in Puerto Rico, not just the trees and their leaves, but the seedlings, soil, how that's changing with rising temperature. The findings, like in many of these other experiments, are not entirely clear-cut. Some of these species appear to be more resilient than others. But one of the findings to pay attention to in Puerto Rico, is that the slower growing species, those seem to be more impacted by the higher temperature. Now that's concerning because many of the largest trees, the old growth, they take their time. They are slow to add their girth and they save a lot of carbon. If those trees have trouble, that's very alarming for the fate of the forest and the fate of the atmosphere. The panels aren't heating the tallest trees. To get a sense of what's happening in the top of the canopy, researchers are using what's called a canopy tower. It's scaffolding that goes up meters tall. They clip on small heaters onto individual leaves. And the upper canopy is an interesting place to look because those are the leaves that are getting blasted by the sun in the noonday. Obviously, it's hard to bring a whole tree into the laboratory to raise its temperature, but there's one place that's well suited to do that. Biosphere 2 is a research facility outside of Tucson, Arizona. Inside the largest greenhouse there is a small tropical forest. Heating the forest at Biosphere 2 is a relatively simple thing to do. They simply turn down the air conditioning in the greenhouse. Some good news is that the trees can withstand really high temperatures and that they grow back. The concern is how many times can individual trees lose their leaves and use their resources to grow them back. We know that over the lifespan of these giants, they're going to face more and more trouble. You have to remember that plants have been living on land for 500 million years, and we've had trees on Earth for nearly 400 million years. And throughout that history, the planet's gotten warmer, it's gotten hotter than it is today, and we still have forests. The sobering thing is how fast we're warming up the planet right now. It would be a real pity if over the coming decades they lose their diversity. If we lose these huge trees